When you fake memory loss, you discover who in your family has a real heart and who's just waiting for you to die. My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 73 years old, and 6 months ago, I made a decision that would forever change how I see my family. I decided to pretend I was developing Alzheimer's disease. Not because I'm cruel, not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because something in my gut told me that the 4 children I'd raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for were not the people I thought they were. It started with small things. Robert, my eldest at 52, had been visiting more frequently after his father passed last year, but his visits felt different, calculated. He'd walk through my house like he was taking inventory, making comments about all this space going to waste and how maintaining such a big property must be exhausting for you, Mom. Linda, my only daughter, had started bringing real estate pamphlets, not vacation brochures, assisted living facilities. Just to have the information, she'd say with that practiced smile she'd perfected in her marriage to a politician, "We want you to have options when you're ready." David, my 3rd child, was the most transparent about his intentions. Still unemployed at 45, with a gambling problem that had cost him 2 marriages, he'd started asking direct questions about my finances. "Mom, do you have everything organized? In case something happens?" Only Susan, my youngest, seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being rather than my will. But what I heard next shattered everything I believed about family. The plan crystallized one evening in October. I was preparing dinner when I overheard Robert on the phone in the living room. He was talking to Linda, and his words made my blood run cold. "The sooner we can establish that she's incompetent, the better. David's debts are getting worse, and we can't wait for her to make poor financial decisions." That's when I knew I had to test them. I started small. I began calling Robert by his father's name occasionally. I had put the milk in the pantry instead of the refrigerator. I'd ask Susan the same question twice in one conversation. I watched their faces carefully, studying their reactions. Robert's eyes would light up with something that looked almost like satisfaction when I made these mistakes. Linda would exchange meaningful glances with her husband. David would immediately follow up these incidents with questions about my important papers. The conversations they had when they thought I couldn't understand. Within 3 weeks of my performance beginning, they called a family meeting. I was in the kitchen, pretending to be confused about which cabinet held the glasses, when I heard them talking in the dining room. "She's definitely getting worse," Linda whispered. "Yesterday, she forgot my husband's name completely." "Dr. Martinez said early intervention is key," Robert added. "We need to start looking at care facilities before she does something dangerous." David's voice was sharper, more impatient. "How long does this process take? I mean, legally speaking, how long before we can manage her affairs?" That's when I realized they weren't just planning my care. They were planning my life. Without me. I started recording our conversations. In my own home, I had every right to document what was happening. The recordings revealed a level of calculated manipulation that still takes my breath away. Linda had researched which of my symptoms would be most convincing to a court. Robert had already spoken to 3 different assisted living facilities about emergency placement. David had contacted a lawyer about power of attorney procedures. That's when I realized the performance had to end. But I couldn't stop yet. I needed to know how deep this betrayal went. I escalated my act. I started forgetting to pay bills, leaving the stove on, getting confused about appointments. I watched my children's reactions shift from concern to excitement to cold calculation. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving dinner. I was sitting at the head of my own table, the table where I'd served thousands of meals to these people, when Robert turned to Linda and said, "We should probably start the competency proceedings after the holidays. The house will sell better in spring." They were talking about my home, our family home, where I'd raised them, where their father had died, where every wall held memories of birthday parties and Christmas mornings, like it was already theirs. I excused myself to the kitchen, where Susan was washing dishes. "Grandma," she said quietly, "are you feeling okay? You seem different lately." I looked at this young woman who'd become a nurse because she wanted to help people, who'd never once asked about my finances or my plans, who visited me not when she needed something, but simply because she loved me. "Susan," I said carefully, "if you thought someone you loved was being hurt by their own family, what would you do?" She stopped washing and looked at me with those clear, honest eyes she'd inherited from her father. I'd protect them, no matter what it cost me. That's when I knew I had an ally. The moment I revealed the truth, everything changed. I planned the revelation for Christmas morning. All 4 children and their families were gathered in my living room, opening presents around the tree my late husband and I had picked out 32 years ago. Robert was explaining to his teenage son why Grandma might need special help soon, when I stood up and walked to the center of the room. "Before we continue," I said, my voice clear and strong, "I have an announcement." The room fell silent. Linda's face already showed concern, probably worried I was about to have an episode in front of the grandchildren. "For the past 6 months," I began, "I've been perfectly healthy. Every confused moment, every forgotten name, every time I put the milk in the wrong place. It was deliberate." The silence stretched like a held breath. Robert's face went white. Linda's mouth fell open. David looked like he was about to be sick. "I've been recording our conversations," I continued, pulling out the small device I'd kept in my pocket for months. "I have documentation of every discussion about my care, every plan you've made for my money, every conversation where you've discussed me like I was already dead." Robert found his voice first. "Mom, you can't be serious. We were trying to help." "Help?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You were trying to help yourselves, to my house, to my savings, to my life." I walked to my desk and pulled out a manila folder. "I've spent the last month making some changes, with the help of Susan, who was the only one of you to show genuine concern for my well-being." The folder contained my new will, my updated power of attorney documents, and a letter I'd written to each of them. "Robert, Linda, David, you are no longer beneficiaries of my estate. The house, the savings, the investments you've been so eager to manage, they're going to Susan and to the children's hospital where she works." The explosion of protests and accusations filled the room. Robert accused me of manipulation. Linda cried about fairness. David threatened to contest the will. Justice came in a form they never expected. But I wasn't finished. "There's more," I said, and the room quieted again. "I've also spoken to Elder Abuse Services about what I've documented. While you didn't physically hurt me, planning to have me declared incompetent for financial gain is a form of abuse." I looked around the room at the faces of the people I'd given everything to. "I raised you to be better than this. I taught you about honesty, integrity, love, but you learned different lessons, that family is just another word for opportunity." Susan was crying quietly, but she came to stand beside me. "Grandma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," I said firmly, "because if I don't stand up for myself, who will?"
The room began to empty. Robert left first, slamming the door behind him. Linda gathered her family with winded dignity, promising this wasn't over. David lingered, trying one last manipulation. "Mom, think about what you're doing to the family." "I'm not doing anything to this family. I'm revealing what you already did to it."
6 months later, I'm still in my home. Susan visits twice a week, not because she has to, but because she wants to. The grandchildren who truly care about me still come around. The ones who loved me for me, not for what I might leave them. Robert, Linda, and David have had to face the consequences of their actions. The recordings I made were legal and valid. The changes to my will were properly documented. And most importantly, I learned who my real family was before it was too late. If you're watching this and you have elderly family members, ask yourself, are you visiting them because you love them or because you're waiting for something? Are you planning their care or planning their assets? And if you're someone who's feeling forgotten or taken advantage of by your own family, remember, you have more power than you think. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply pay attention and act on what you discover. If this story resonated with you, if you believe that family should be about love, not greed, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refuse to be victims of those closest to them. And share this with someone who needs to remember that age doesn't make you powerless. It makes you wise enough to see the truth. The truth is, I may have pretended to lose my memory, but in the process, I found something far more valuable: my self-respect, my real family, and the courage to demand better from the people in my life. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your loved ones is the chance to show you who they really are. Just be prepared for what you might discover. What would you have done in Margaret's situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below.